Hello and welcome to this brand new channel. Today we're following the long-awaited Ellie Corset sewing pattern. It's available on Etsy or cheaper on the official website linked below. The pattern comes with full step-by-step instructions, and to make it even easier, there's now tutorial videos. Best place to start is by collecting your equipment. I've created a separate video if you need help printing and putting the pattern together. Once the fabric pieces are all cut out, you should have 7 pieces of your main fabric and 7 for the lining. I didn't have enough fabric to have the front lining on the fold, so I cut it into 2 pieces and then added 1 cm to the side of the front seam allowance. Place the pieces of the main fabric right sides together. The order is back, side, front, side back, back. To make this corset, I upcycled a black dress and jeans. The brand really stresses upcycling because we can help the environment and create at the same time. To sew the seams using the running stitch. Sew down the seams using the running stitch on the 1 cm seam allowance. Always sew top down. It's alright if you haven't aligned them right, it will get covered up by the bias lining in the end. Press the seams open. Repeat all the same steps for lining and attach all sides together. If this is an advanced piece to make, I recommend starting with the lining and getting all the mistakes out on that first before starting on the main fabric. Following the optional boning channel pattern, trace a horizontal line onto both sides of the front main piece. I use white fabric chalk. Fabric pens also work really well, and even pencil if you have light fabric. Grab some fabric tape and measure the entire length of the channel and cut out a piece of tape to that size. Draw a line down the middle of the tape. Place it on top of the horizontal line on the corset. Using pins, match up the 2 lines together across the tape. The tape is a lot wider than the boning that I have, but I mainly use what I already own. It saves the environment and it still worked out. Cut out the boning for the channel. I use a 1/4 inch synthetic whalebone that I already owned. It's the same length as the channel minus a few centimetres. This is so it doesn't burst out the side of the channel. I also rounded off the corners to stop sharp edges tearing the fabric. Draw the channel onto the tape. The channel should be a width of the boning plus a few millimetres. On the channel, stitch down either side of the tape. Next is to create shoulder straps. If you want to make your own, you need to measure the length needed over your shoulder, and then measure the width of the front strap connector, or just cut out the strap following my pattern. You should have 2 identical strips of fabric. Fold the strap in half, right sides together. I added a piece of string to the inside and stitched it down. This will make it easier when you need to turn the straps right side out. Then sew down the strap with 1/2 cm seam allowance, which is roughly the size of a foot's width, and repeat for the other strap. Turn the strap right side out. This can be a little bit difficult. Even with the string, I still found it a struggle as it can snap if you pull too hard. In all honesty, I hate doing it. I normally get someone else to do it. And the best tip is to iron it all down flat. Pin the straps to the front and right sides of the lining, at the shoulder notch and on the back notch indicated on the sewing pattern. Make sure the straps are facing down and against the corset. This way, when it flips right side up, it will face the right way. Stitch the strap down about 1/2 cm from the edge. This is a perfect time to test if your size is right for you, before you have to do a lot of unpicking. Place the lining on top of the main fabric, right sides together. Pin and sew around the top of the corset and the back of the corset down the edge. The sides are 3 cm away from the edge. I found it easier to mark where the top seam allowance meets the back side seam allowance as a stitching reference. Stitch the side of the back down. Reinforce and stitch over the corners where the seam allowance meets. Carry on stitching around the top and side of the corset. Cut down the corners on the back of the corset. Be careful not to cut into any of the stitching. This is an important step as there's a lot of bulk here, and if there's too much fabric we won't get crisp corners. Cut around the front strap seam allowance too, so it's more crisp when turned the right side out. Snip into all the seam allowances to make it curve easier when turned right side out. This is when I added the boning to the front channel. Attach a strip of medium weight interfacing to both the back pieces on the wrong side of the fabric, around 3 inches wide. Iron and press it with the shiny side facing the fabric. It will increase the fabric strength when the eyelets are attached. Turn the right way out and press the top of the corset so it's neatly folded at the seam. Top stitch around the top and back of the corset to create crisp edges. Then pin down the seams, matching both layers of fabric together. Or you can just hand stitch between the seams to get more control of the layers, and then machine stitch down the seams through all the fabric. Create boning channels down the back edge on each side of the corset, and then again an inch away from the edge to create a second boning channel. The set of boning will help support the eyelets. To make boning channels, draw lines a few millimetres wider than your boning size. Draw them top to bottom down the corset. I use boning that's 1/4 inch wide and synthetic whalebone. Metal will give you a much stronger frame, but that's not what I had at hand. Draw the rest of your boning channels onto the inner side of every seam and stitch down every channel. Cut out the boning the length of each channel, but take off 1 cm from the base as we still need to sew the bias binding onto the bottom of the corset, and it needs space to be stitched down. Again, if you want to do the same pattern that I used for the front of the corset, trace the optional boning channel layout. The file includes a size 6 and a size 24 pattern. You need to find out how the boning lays out in your size using the 2 as a guide. Size 24, for example, has more boning as it's wider than a size 6, but you might want to add even more. The design is fully up to you. To make bias binding, measure the base of the corset plus 3 cm for seam allowance. Cut a strip of fabric on the bias at a 45-degree angle from the selvage. The strip is 4.5 cm in width and the length you just measured. Create the corset binding by placing a pin onto an ironing board 2 cm in width. With the fabric strip right sides out, fold the sides inwards and pull the fabric through the pin. Iron it flat to create folds and press the whole length. Fold it again and press, and this will create a crease in the middle of the tape. Right sides together, pin the bias binding onto the base of the back of the corset. The rest of the tape should be facing upwards towards the corset. Leave around 1.5 cm at either end for seam allowance. Stitch the bias binding following the 1 cm seam allowance, following the stitch line. If the inside seam allowance and the tape is super bulky like mine, it's because there's 5 layers of fabric there. Then I recommend cutting it down as close to the seam as possible, but making sure not to cut the tape itself. Fold the bias over to the front of the corset and pin, then top stitch it down. I use the top stitching foot to help stitch more evenly, but you can just use the running foot. Tuck each end of the seam allowance inwards and stitch over that. Last thing you need to do is mark where the eyelets need to go on the back and add the eyelets. I place mine evenly between the boning channels. My eyelets are around 1/4 inch, but you can use whatever you like. The corset is now finished. If you have any questions, I'm pretty much available 24/7 because I never sleep. But if you have any questions, let me know in the comments or a DM. Thank you for watching this far, and I will hopefully be doing more pattern videos very soon if I can get over the crippling cringe that this induces. And yeah, that's how you create the corset. I can't wait to see what you make. Please tag me if you end up making it. Hopefully the other videos will be better than this one. Okay, bye.